12 months to determine how is the best investment at the state level into after school and summer school during this time that funds are available, knowing that there's a tremendous amount of activity going on through school districts and private providers, nonprofits throughout the state. So just appreciate for all of you who have been part of those conversations, shared input with us, said, what could we do? What if we did? Have really valued that input and the comments that have come our way. So to give you a really big picture, and then we'll narrow in, South Dakota has received about $750 million in federal funds over the last couple of years related to COVID. In any given year, the state budget for education, so that's state tax dollars and federal funds that we have authority to spend, is somewhere around $850 million. So this investment of one-time funding, $750 million for K-12 education, for nutrition programs, for libraries, is a tremendous amount of funding, highest ever rounds of federal funding that the state has received. So we want to make sure that we're investing that well. Of that $750 million, most of that has gone directly to school districts following federal law. This last round, though, of the elementary and secondary schools emergency relief funds, those came out in March. They were signed into law. The funds came to us in July. There's a portion of that the state has to make some state level investments in, meaning the state is holding about $38 million for those state level requirements, and then the rest of the funding went out to school districts locally. Part of that $38 million is funding for after school programming and summer school programming, $3.8 million in each area. And so it's a really exciting time to say, what's the next step? What are great investments that we can make right now that have impact and life beyond the funding cycle that's available? So these funds are available through September 30th of 2024. So we've got 2.5, 3 years to spend those dollars and make some big investments that really can improve quality and access to ensure that kids across the state have access to great after school and summer school experiences. I mentioned we've had a lot of stakeholder conversations over the last several months about those investments. Several of you I know were part of our August Education Summit in Sioux Falls, and that really helped us to prioritize and start thinking about where do we put these dollars in big categories. And so in after school, those investments will be in resources and toolkits to help with administration of after school programs. What does really quality service look like? What does a relationship with a school district look like, or other community partners as after school programs are operated at the very most local level? Also making available some grants, some competitive grants, so that after school programs can purchase materials, technology, resources that they need to be their best and offer really great learning experiences for kids. And then also looking at offering some mobile programming. So investing in kits or trailers that can move throughout the state and provide new and exciting experiences for students. We've heard a lot where at the lowest elementary level grades, there's great program in place and people feel relatively confident about those services. As we get into the older students, middle school students especially, we've heard that there's a need for more materials, more programming, and so we're excited to continue conversations and figure out what that looks like, and hopefully provide some dollars for local organizations to innovate and make great opportunities available for our 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th graders as well. So that's kind of the overall look, big picture, and more micro at the after school programming level, look at our federal funds. Billy and I had a chance to sit down and have coffee a couple of weeks ago, and so valued that conversation. We came up with all sorts of great ideas to save the world and make the world a better place. I really appreciated that time, Billy. And I hope that those kinds of conversations can continue. One of the highlights of that conversation for me was the passion, the energy, the importance placed on relationships as we think about after school programs, both with, if it's a Boys and Girls Club or an independent private after school program, the relationship with the school district. We know that academic, social, emotional learning happens throughout the day, but that can continue in informal non-traditional ways through after-school programming to support kids in all of their life experiences and their education journey. And just think there's a lot of power for families and for kids to have that full experience, both in the school and then in an after-school environment as well. So for all the students that are on the call today, I'm really looking forward to hearing your stories and impact that your experiences have had. That'll be high value for me. And finally, I would just say that we've got these funds for a couple of years. We've got big categories, and we'll be announcing soon how to start accessing those funds. I would ask that you continue to bring ideas forward. Be thinking about if your organization has an idea for growth, for partnership, for really good resources, you start thinking about how you might access some of those competitive grant funds for really high value, high impact work in your local organizations, or through a state level network like the After School Network, Black Hills Special Services, and the Statewide Family Engagement Center. Really appreciate the partnerships there. So Billy, I'll stop there. I would love to open up for Q&A and an open discussion if we can do that.
Yeah, that would be great. I can start with a couple questions and then let people kind of warm up to that. So if you want to raise your hand, if you want to come off mute, or if you want to put it directly into the chat box, like feel free to do all of those things, right? So as we go through, but so talking about, these are like this is crazy numbers when we talk about numbers, right? Like for the folks who are after school, we have been living on paper plate crayon budgets for years, right? Like that's what we know. And we do a great job of that. I think everyone appreciates that. So thinking larger, thinking bigger is kind of it's a hard step forward, but once you get to that, I think it's been really awesome. But I guess what kind of estimated, in your best guess, timeline, without putting you on a spot, right? What is the kind of timeline for looking at what this looks like for the next 3 years?
Yeah, I wish I had a hard date in terms of when applications would open. I don't yet have that. We're working to get all the approvals in place federally and state level to make sure that we're administering the funds in line with federal regulations and meeting the requirements that we need to there. So one of the pieces that is still unknown is data collection. There'll be a high level of accountability tied to these federal funds. And I know all of us are up for accountability, but we need to be able to manage that too. And so we want to be very clear about what are folks who apply for grants or receiving funds being held to in the process. And we don't have really good, clear information there yet. So as soon as we possibly can, we will do that. Because of where we're at in the year, I'm guessing that's going to be into the winter of 2022 after we cross the calendar year.
I always mute myself so there's no background noise. We're in a space where there's some construction going on, so I apologize. I try to mute myself as often as possible. I don't see any questions coming in just yet, but I don't want to take away from someone who wants to come off of mute and do those different things, but I can probably ask another question. I think the next question is, you talked about relationships with school districts. When I first took on this role in October, I did a listening tour where I traveled around the state and listened and met with after school professionals, a lot of people in this room. And one of the main, we did a quick survey and kind of gauged where relationships are. The positive that came out of that, positive data that came out of that was really clear. After school, or school in the day versus with after school, the school districts do a great job and really value after school programs, and they do a great job of referring. So that is the highest scoring thing, that schools refer kids to after school programs, right? They see the needs and they see where that can be fit. The biggest part is shared space. And having access, because a lot of times school districts maybe after school programs are in school districts. So if you had one piece of advice of how to start building your relationship with your school district, what do you think that would be? What would be your first step if no one started yet?
I would say that if you're filling the shoes of a director role for an after-school program, just building relationships with school leaders. I would start with building leaders or superintendent or school board members. Any of those folks have a pulse on what the district's strategic plan is, what's happening in their buildings every day, what the needs of students and families are. And so even if it's a cold call, reaching out and saying, hey, can we meet for coffee? Can I stop by your office for 15 minutes? Start small and just getting to know one another. And I know that sounds super easy and straightforward. And I recognize fully that's not super easy and straightforward. But at the building leadership level, at the district level, to be able to see the whole system, or with school board members. Oftentimes school leaders have 90 things that they're working on in a day and trying to figure out. And for most of them, my guess is if there isn't a relationship already, your work and the services that you provide are on their list of, hey, I should be connected to that, should be working with them, and they just haven't been able to carve out time to do that yet. So reach out, even if they haven't reached out to you, just for that initial conversation, and ask the questions at this point in time about, hey, what are you looking at in terms of investments of your federal funding, especially this third round? Districts received high dollar amounts through the third round, or the American Rescue Plan ESSER funds. ESSER is that emergency relief fund for elementary and secondary schools. And so through that, many schools are trying to address total student wellness. So health and nutrition supports, mental health supports, behavioral health supports, in addition to academic instruction. And so I think that's a great reason or door opener for partnerships between after-school programs and school districts if they don't already exist.
That's great. I'd also suggest, if you haven't started a relationship, start with the office folks, right? Take them some cookies and really build that relationship, because they are the gatekeepers. They are really the people running the show. So that's really an important piece. Anyone have any
solid
questions?
advice?
Yeah. Anyone else have any questions? Kind of open that up.
Hi, I can share a little bit about what we have done in North Dakota and follow that up with a question. I'm the network lead for the North Dakota After School Network, and we've seen great success with our after school set aside was offered as direct grants to not only current 21st century grantees, but also community-based organizations. And I'm not sure exactly how it is in South Dakota, but in North Dakota, that funding hadn't previously been opened directly to community-based organizations. So that has been a great way that we have helped build relationships, and also seen where the network can step in with some of our resources and help those programs that maybe haven't had large grants before, set up a framework for what a high quality program looks like. So I just wanted to share a little bit of success of what we've seen in North Dakota as well.
Excellent. Thanks, Kristen. It's nice to meet you.
Any other questions? Youth, this is a perfect time to ask someone. She seems very warm, but she has a really high title in our state. And so this is a perfect opportunity to use your voice to say to the person who's in charge of all the education in South Dakota, what is on your mind. So don't feel shy about what that looks like, okay? I want to encourage you to do that. Giving you guys just a couple awkward moments of silence, so that way if you really have something that you can do, if you want to send it to me, I would also, I'm not shy enough to ask the question directly. So if you don't feel comfortable enough to do that. Oh, Terry, you're up. You want to ask a question?
Yeah, thanks. I was just hoping that Secretary Sanderson, could you speak a little bit to the potential of community-based organizations getting involved? Because that was something that I was curious to with the work that I'm doing. I've got some relationship that we're building with the school district, but being a startup nonprofit and working with other, startup nonprofit groups, like, in fact, there's a new academy here in Sioux Falls called ACE Academy. And it's doing amazing work, but it's in its second year. And I know that it's not on the radar like other programs might be, nor is the after school program we piloted last year at Hurdle Life Coach Foundation, where I'm the CEO, where I'm the executive director there. So, we get a lot of positive affirmation from like JDAI about being community-based and such. And it was suggested that I pop in here to see what's going on at the network. And I'm just listening to try to understand. but what that director from North Dakota said really resonated with one of my curiosities. So how do we get involved as startup nonprofit groups that are really doing in-reach into underserved communities, working with kids of color, working alongside doing trauma work as well. So knowing that our work is impactful and meaningful and filling gaps, but maybe not being on the radar as far as being in line with some of the flow. And I also know that federal level applications and accountability takes a lot of capacity. So it could be a lot for a small new nonprofit to take on, but with a strong board and the right people around you, I really believe that all things are possible.
Yeah, great question, Terry. Thanks for stepping into the conversation. I would say that the ESSER funds have some flexibilities that, to my understanding, and Alan's on the phone here from the department as well with the 21st Century programs. Appreciate you being here, Alan. That the 21st Century grants don't necessarily have. There's a limited pool of funds and some priorities around those that we're able to restructure or think differently about in terms of these ESSER dollars. And so, yes, I would say that what you shared, Terry, and the nuances there are really important, that there's an opportunity for nonprofits generally to apply who are providing after-school services. To your point, the accountability and meeting federal regulations with the grant dollars will be really important. So that'll be a part of that application process, some assurances that any organization that applies could meet the requirements that we're held to at the state level, and that the organization could fulfill what they put forward in the grant application. If it's an application for say, creating toolkits or resources that could be used broadly across the state. Obviously, that requires more capacity and folks involved than, say, purchasing robotics kits or coding materials, technology that could provide actual education services. And so there'd be flexibility for a variety of different activities within those funds. I think that it's really important for all of us to be thinking about, there are certainly materials and resources that are needed to run operations and make after-school programs accessible for kids in our communities across the state. Those we certainly need to think about. We also need to think about how can we use these funds to have impacts beyond the life of the funding cycle that's available now to us. So if that sparks some ideas or some of your thinking, hopefully that helps. And then we can, over the coming weeks and months, continue to revise and get applications out.
Terry, Allen in the chat box mentioned you, so I think connecting you two would be great. I could send an email connecting you two easily right after this. So
thank you, Billy.
Thank you for that. I have one more follow-up question, if I may. I really do appreciate the opportunity to think innovatively about like tools and materials and technology. But I also know with the work we're doing, and I also mentioned ACE Academy because we're working closely with them, we struggle then with capacity and like having enough team members to support the need that we're attracting. What type of direction do you have there for us? And it may not be within this pool of money. And a lot of times we run up against that a lot of dollars don't really address capacity. But when you are an attractive organization, you attract more need than the capacity that you have to manage. Do you have any recommendations for us about capacity building grants, or if there's any flexibility within these dollars to help with growing our teams?
Yeah, great question. That's something that as a leader in state level organization, government organization, I struggle with too. We've got a million things on any given day that would be awesome to do and limited resources and capacity to do that. So within these funds, my preference would be that they're used to help drive programming and access to great school options, whether that's traditional education in the school systems or through these after-school summer school funds. Because they're a short-term funding cycle, one-time funds, it's really hard to put funds into FTE from these dollars because there's a cutoff point a couple of years down the road where the organization has capacity for a short period of time and then has to scale back simply because the funding source dries up. And so we struggle with that same kind of thing here at the Department of Education and in school districts too. Alan, I'm going to bring you into the conversation. And do you have any insights in the after school front, either 21st century or beyond that, around kind of that capacity building?
Thank you. Yeah, so to specifically address the 21st Century Grant, we do a lot. Our funding cycle is a 5-year cycle, and so it's easier for us to be able to fund those FTE, and a lot of our programs do build their staffing capacity with these. They're still supplemental. They can't take the place of existing staff, and so adding additional enrichment into programs is really the primary goal of these dollars. I don't, off the top of my head, have any other thoughts on like additional grants, but that's something that I can certainly keep my eyes on and see if maybe there are other network, or not network leads, but other 21st century leads that would have further insight to that in the region.
Terry, I can speak just a little bit on that to say if you look at a 5-year cycle for 21st century or a 3-year cycle, kind of 2 3/4 cycle for ESSER funds, when you look at the data behind the collection of that is really probably the key factor in that, right? We won't see a flush of, for lack of a better term, cash coming from the federal government probably in 2 to 3 years. So, I mean, who knows what will happen between now and then, but we won't see this amount of funding. But hopefully foundations have grown since then, and other community opportunities such as that. Maybe some of the private public partnerships could thrive what some of that is. But I think if nothing else, we have to figure out, and I think Secretary Sanderson spoke to this, we have to collect on the data, right? We have to figure out what this means, and what the impact of these funds will be. That so. Yeah.
Kristen, thanks for your comment in the chat too about the data that helps support or justify the additional staff capacity. Good point. Billy, can I ask a question of the group?
Absolutely.
Our staff obviously is working with these federal funds, and we're constantly in communications with school districts and looking at data about, especially right now, the impacts of the pandemic over the last couple of years on youth development, academic learning and success. And there are a whole host of factors that may have been kind of in the undercurrent in the past in the education system, but really have risen up to show us that there are needs that families have at this present time. From the vantage point that you all have working with kids in after school programs, daily, weekly basis, tell Alan and I a little bit about what you're seeing. What are you recognizing, seeing in the moment right now that might not have been part of your routine or what you were seeing in the last couple of years prior to the pandemic?
Hi, this is Sarah Hansen. I'm with Volunteers of America in Sioux Falls. I would say the biggest change that we have seen, and I think I've heard this from other providers as well, is just the mental health impact on the children and the severity of behaviors that we are seeing, and the impact that really has on their ability to learn. So it really is kind of this domino effect where things were so unstable for them for many years, and that has had some mental health and behavioral impacts, and that impacts their ability to learn at school as well as in our after school programs. And I think just continuing to find ways and resources to equip our teachers, because in many ways our teachers have not changed, to deal with those increasing behaviors is probably the reoccurring theme that we see.
Thanks, Sarah. And we're hearing that, seeing that in the K-12 system as well. I've been trying to figure out, across the country, things have gone relatively well through the pandemic for most South Dakotans. I recognize additional stress, isolation, uncertainty all plays in to what our young people are experiencing. And on a percentage basis of their entire lifetime, this time of uncertainty has certainly been a bigger portion of their lives than for us as adults. And so the impact, the frequency for them is a different thing than it is for adults. It's interesting to me, though, that we are seeing the behavioral challenges or mental health challenges at the scale that we are. And what can, other than making professionals available and services available, how do we address root cause? Are there things within school systems and after school programs that we can really hone in on in the coming years to help turn the tide and help bring some balance and de-stress to our students on a mental health or a behavioral health front?
I think Desi brings a good point in the chat box.
Oh, Sophia would like to say, oh, there she is.
About your previous question, with like the changes with like the whole COVID stuff, I think it was hard for me personally when the pandemic first happened, because like you couldn't see anybody and like it was hard for all the Zoom at first. But I'm glad that like we can like learn in person, and like I'm glad that you can like still wear masks, but you don't have to. And like I think that that's like a good thing, like because some people still want to, because there still is like the pandemic, but it isn't as bad, I think. I don't really know, but yeah, I'm glad that we're back in school.
Yeah, very well said, Sophia. Thanks for coming on. Desi, thanks for the note in chat. I have seen that my son is an 8th grader, and in his circle of friends, he's got good friends here in Pierre and throughout the state. I've definitely seen a level up in maturity and admire that about our young people and what they've brought because of the challenges that they faced.
Is there any other information that you can share with Secretary Sanderson and Alan from Department of Education? I want to be cognizant of our time. We've got about 25 minutes left, and I want to make sure I reserve at least 20 minutes with the youth, because they took time out this morning to come spend time with us. So yeah, but I don't want to cut off any conversation. This is a perfect opportunity that everyone's getting. So if not, okay, I think we're going to transition a little bit to the youth. I'm going to have Alzar turn on your camera, so you'll have to see us at this point, and so we can see you. And then I'm going to ask for youth. I'm going to start with Alzar, and then I'll go to the other group that has so many. But I'm going to ask you first to just tell us what your name is, kind of just a little bit, just a quick, where you are, what school do you go to, or where you're at in life. And then I want to know what your favorite snack is. I didn't share mine, but as a kid, I used to sneak into the fridge and take like Kraft singles. I don't think we were ever rich enough to have Kraft. It was whatever, Always Save or Best Choice or something of that nature. And I would eat like 4 or 5 pieces of cheese that I would unwrap, and I would fold them into little squares and then a square. I don't know why I did that. It was so weird. But I thought I would tell an embarrassing story to kick us off just a little bit. But Alzar, kind of talk to us a little bit.
Yeah, my name's Alzar, and I just finished my first semester at USD. My favorite snack would probably be the extra cheddar goldfish crackers. Those are pretty good. Was there anything else you wanted me to say?
No, we'll get back into deeper questions. Don't worry. That was the easy one. That was just the easy one. What about Grace, Sophia, and is it Jamel or Jamel?
You can go. I'm Sophia Canland. We all go to South Middle School in Rapid City, South Dakota. And my favorite snack is I like to have peanut butter on bread, and then that's all I eat. Like I have that for lunch almost every day. I'm super weird about that, but it's good to me.
Proud of this. Hello, my name is Jamal Henderson. My favorite snack is ramen.
Hi, I'm Grace Silk, and probably my favorite snack is maybe Cheez-Its if I want something salty, but if I want something sweet, maybe Gushers.
Oh, I'm also in 7th grade.
Oh, I'm in 8th grade.
I'm in 7th.
Gotcha. Cheez-Its are the top. We buy Cheez-Its at Costco because it's so needed in our family. And I will tell you this, if this is a secret about peanut butter. I don't know if anyone knows this, but if you have the hiccups, take a spoon and get the biggest amount of peanut butter you can and eat it, and somehow it'll almost immediately get rid of your hiccups. Fun fact. Okay, let's go into some real questions though, guys. How about this? I'm gonna start with Sophia, and I want you to tell us about who has had the biggest impact on you outside of your family. So not a family member, a non-family member. Who's had the biggest impact on?
Can I do like, can I do like a step parent or something? Or
Yes, you can be as comfortable as yes, you can do that.
okay, I think it's my stepdad. He's impacted my life like a lot because like he got married to my mom like 4 years ago, and like 2 months after they got married, I was life flighted to a hospital, but he lived in Alaska, and so he like sent me a whole bunch of stuff, and he we have this thing called Marco Polo. I don't know if anybody else has heard of it, but like and he like Marco Polo'd me a whole bunch, and he was always calling to see if I was okay, and he did all that even when my dad didn't. My dad didn't do anything like that, and so he impacted my life really well.
It's a great story. And for all the old people in the crowd who don't know what Marco Polo is, it is a great way to be cool if you're old, because it's a record yourself a conversation and you send it and the other person responds whenever they have a chance. So it's really, honestly, it's a really cool way to be young and hip. J-Mel.
Okay, what's the question?
The question is, who has had the biggest impact on you outside of your family?
I would say my PE teacher, because he helped me work harder and get my goals done.
Awesome. Grace?
Probably my kindergarten teacher, because she was my first teacher and I was a very shy person. I still am somewhat, but she helped me build who I am today and to be a better person.
Yeah, I can tell you who Mrs. Hicks was my kindergarten teacher. I still remember her name. Alzar, you're next.
Mine would probably have to be my sister's best friend. She's kind of like family to us already, but I think growing up, she really installed in me some morals and stuff. And at first I thought she was just being annoying and like always trying to be mad at me or get a reason to like be mad at me. But as I grew older, I realized that it was just like to make me a better person. And I am who I am a lot of because of her now.
Awesome. So I'm going to start back with you, Alzar, and we're going to go backwards again. What do you remember? What was the biggest impact of the after school programs that you went to? And maybe tell which kind of programs you participated. You've been to at least one that transitioned to another. But then talk about like what was the most memorable part of after school?
I went to George McGovern Middle School and I went to the after school program there. And it's been a while since I've been in middle school, but I'll tell you, I don't remember anything I really learned in middle school. All I remember is the memories I made in middle school. And I think some memories is something I value right now. And I just remember making most of my friends through the after school program when I was in middle school. So if you were to ask me what I learned in middle school, I probably wouldn't tell you much, but I could share with you a lot of stories I had in the after school program.
I think those are just as important, right?
Yeah.
Let's go back to Grace.
Most memorable part would probably have to be just my friends and the new friends I made, because I just transferred to South and I'm new, completely new. But I probably my friends, because they helped me a lot get through some things, and they do a lot of stuff with me.
Jamel?
I would probably have to say meeting new people and learning new skills.
Name a skill. Can you do that? Can I put you on the spot for 1 second? And if not, you just tell me no.
Making good French toast.
Making good French toast. That's a lifelong skill. Sophia.
Well, I think it was like art club, because I really like the teacher, Miss McMahon. She's like awesome. And like I think I just grew on my art skills, and it was awesome to have my friend Madison there. And yeah, it was just like it's a fun club, and you just do art and like clay, and I'm like, and she's like super nice, and so I think that's it.
No, that totally makes sense. Let me ask you guys. So you guys have spent a lot of energy talking about relationships, right? You talked about the impacts that you guys have. You talked about like that was a big important piece and your most memorable piece. So let me ask you a really tough question. If we gave you $100,000, right? How would you spend that in your after school on relationships? So you can't buy anything, right? You can't buy like a new basketball or a new car or van, or like you can't buy something. What would you spend 100, like, and it doesn't have to be specific, right? What is something that you can spend $100,000 on, or just a big amount of money, right? We're not gonna say that. I'm gonna start with this time I'm gonna start with Sophia. Sophie, yeah, Sophia. I want you to just speak what's on your mind. And if you're not ready, you can tell me to come back to you.
I'm a little confused about the question, like,
Sure.
so I can't spend it. Like
you can't buy something. You can't buy a book, you can't buy jump ropes. But what if I gave you like what kind of program would you start to help build relationships with your friends in the after school program?
You could buy I get it.
oh, okay. I see. I would probably start a book club, and like a whole bunch of people, and then we would like vote on a book, and then we would all just like, and then we would do like the popcorn reading, like one person reads this much and the next person reads that much, like, because I'm like a book nerd, so like I think the book club would be fun.
If we could make badges for book nerds, we certainly would. There would be medals across the country. I'm gonna skip to Alzar. Alzar, your question. What are you gonna spend $100,000 on?
This is a tough question, I'm not gonna lie. If I had money to spend, but it can't be like materialistic things.
I just don't want you to buy a new gym. I don't want you to buy something.
Yeah,
I want a program. Like talk about the programs that you participate in, maybe.
Yeah, so I think if there was money to spend, maybe invest in things that could help out with like youth's future. So finding programs or getting people to come in that can help them develop as people, because I know in middle school I didn't really learn much life skills or like things like that, but putting kids in like a step putting kids in a position to where they could succeed in the future. For example, I know at the Boys and Girls Club, at the CYC, the YMCA location, they were doing these things where they would have kids at little, like they would have a stand and then they would sell like bags of chips. They learn how to deal with money and other like life skills that are good to build up as you grow older. So if I couldn't buy anything, I think I'd definitely use that money to put it towards like resources that can help them develop in the future.
Great. JML.
I would say I would make a club that helps you survive in the wilderness and just learn how to, just in case you're in a situation where you have to go in the wilderness, you learn how to survive.
That would be a good club. I think I would go into that club. Like I need to be able to survive in the wild.
What about you, Grace?
Maybe like a sports club to work on, like if you love sports like me, you could work on sports and maybe grow more off of that into high school to maybe get a scholarship or to make some new friends too.
Totally true. Here's my next question, guys, because I want to give some time for everyone else to ask you questions too. So here's I think my last question. What's next for you? What is in your future? Like what are next steps for you? Maybe just right now, maybe you mean tomorrow, maybe you mean 5 years, maybe you mean retirement. I don't know what you mean, but what are next steps for you? I'm gonna start with Alzar again.
Well, I just finished my last final before I came on this meeting. Yeah, so just looking forward to finishing the year off strong and getting my degree. And oh yeah, I'm gonna be my major is history education, secondary education. Yeah, that's what my future.
Waiting for him to tell me that. I was waiting for him to
yeah,
say
yeah, yeah.
I was locking it in and he wasn't taking it, but finally he took it. I appreciate that. Let's go with you, Grace. Next steps.
It's hard to figure out what the next step is like with careers, but probably just to wake up again tomorrow, but to get good grades, to study, and to get ready for high school.
Yeah, truth be told, that is your job. Don't think about careers. Working in school, that is your job every single day. Except for break. Break is coming up and you should enjoy that, right? Jamel.
Probably becoming a space engineer and making AI.
All right, Sophia.
Well, when I'm older, I want to work in a hospital where in the kids section, like we're with all the kids that are like diabetics and like when they first get there and I want to do that because like I'm a diabetic and like type 1 and I want to like be able to say that I made it through that. And sure it was tough, but I made it through it so you can too. And so I think that would be cool.
I think before we get into questions, I just want to acknowledge that you guys are all pretty stinking amazing, right? Like just hearing your stories, the fact that you were willing to come and talk to strangers about you and who you are and share your experiences takes a lot of courage. And honestly, it takes a lot of investment. And then telling your hero stories, right? Like being diabetic and dealing with that on a daily basis, sharing sharing embarrassing things, not embarrassing, but sharing like vulnerable things, like what is your favorite snack, which is kind of silly, or talking about being that teacher, right? Like whatever that means. I just want to acknowledge what that is. We have some questions from the audience. So Kristen from North Dakota asked, what would you do if there wasn't an after school program? What would you have done?
For who?
Should I go
Uh,
first?
Yeah, start, Alzar, and then you guys can follow.
So I think I really wouldn't know what I would have done because I wasn't, well, I played sports, but I think the after school program is especially good for kids who don't play sports and who aren't involved because it gives them a chance to do something after school. So it would be hard. Like I really don't know what I would have done with my time. It honestly just kept me more active because I did a lot of activities, kept me more involved. I think, I don't know, I just remember the after school program being very good, especially with like relationships and socializing. So it really helped out on that because I know if kids just go straight home from school every day, they have more opportunity to do things they're not supposed to. It'll get kind of lonely. You'll get less, like you won't make as much friends. So after school program, I think is like probably one of the best things kids can go to at their age. I don't know if that answered the question, but yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. What about you guys? What do you think? What would you do?
I don't know what I would do. I remember the day before the first day where you go walk through the school and like meet all your teachers. And I remember like stopping by the table and my parents are like, go talk to them, go talk to them. And I'm like just hiding behind them because I'm like so embarrassed and shy. And then like I got the papers and I'm like, oh man, oh man. And then I signed them and I'm like, I really hope I get in. I want to get in. And that's all I thought about. I just wanted to be able to go into the after school club. And I think that I grew a lot. So I don't know what I would do without it. And I like, that's where I see most of my friends and hang out because like I can't really hang out after school. So there's the after school club. That's where I hang out with my friends.
I'll go next. Honestly, I would probably just get soaked in video games.
I appreciate that honesty.
I'd probably just do sports because that's what I do after school is sports. And then I go to club hub or I go to club hub and then sports. But I was talking to my mom yesterday and I was saying sorry because I do basketball and then I also play my violin and I had a game yesterday and then I had a concert right after. So it was really crazy. And I told her I was sorry because it is so crazy. And she said she'd rather have me do all of this, her running around and everything, than me doing drugs or anything bad. Oh yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. Any other questions from anyone?
I know we're getting to the end here, Billy, in terms of time, but as we were talking about careers and skills, Alizar, thanks for bringing that up. I think adults often ask kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? Or what career do you want to have? And that's a really hard question to find one label that you feel confident about and comfortable with. I think it's often easier to think about what problems do you want to solve? What help do you want to provide people? And so I'm curious, what kind of problems do you guys want to solve? Or how do you want to help the world be a better place?
Me personally, I know this is like this might be weird, but like I want to like do something to like diabetic stuff is like super expensive and it's like and other medicine is like super expensive and I know it's expensive to like make it and everything, but like people are like dying because they don't have that. And so like because it's so expensive and they can't like afford to pay for all of these medical supplies. And so I think that if I could like I think I would like lower the prices like a little bit just because like just to help people out because like people need medicine to like survive and like they need this stuff but they can't get it because like they might not have enough money.
Here, I'll go next. I think I would make charities for homeless people and make a charity that like gives them like materials that they might need that they don't have in their lives to just help them have a better life.
I probably do what he was saying and like help people who are homeless, help them get a like learn more to like get a job, or maybe help animals who are lost or don't have homes, and help people get an animal that need an animal to help them.
For me, this explanation might be a little long. Sorry if it goes over the time, but I just wanted to become a teacher because I liked interacting with others, and I don't know, history. I just chose history because I like history. But a problem that I've noticed a few problems throughout working with the Boys and Girls Club and school myself. I think that as much as we would like to admit our schooling and our school system is kind of like equal, to me, it doesn't really seem so because for one reason, I think some kids are exposed to more opportunities than others. And I feel like, for example, like there are kids who are in the Spanish immersion program, and I had no idea what that was until like my 11th grade in high school. But then there's kids who have been doing it since kindergarten. And since they've been doing it since they were a young kid, once they graduated, they were offered all these scholarships and opportunities and less money when they went to college. Another thing I noticed was like the relationship between like your socioeconomic status and like your education. For example, I actually wrote a paper on this, that's why I'm bringing this up. But I just noticed when I started working at the Boys and Girls Club, there's multiple locations. And I kind of noticed that the relationship between behavior with kids and where the demographic of the building, or like the area where the kids would go to the building, and I saw how they would relate. So kids in like higher socioeconomic areas, they would have like better behavior with children, along with like almost like better grades, as I did more research, than kids in lower demographic areas, socioeconomic areas. And that's just because of like outside factors like family life and stuff like that, that sometimes teachers don't take into consideration. Like along with that, there's also like areas where kids in better areas with better schooling have access to teachers who are more suited for the job, better resources. So it just seems like there's just like a lot of things that are unfair when kids learn. So that's a problem I noticed. Yeah.
Darla said it, you guys are amazing, but bravo, those go forth and do good things in the world.
Alazar, I'm going to share my screen for just a second because there's some great data behind what you just said, right? This is what after school is. After school increases attendance, behavior, and coursework. But in addition to that, here's some great information that next time call me before you finish your paper. I can help you with some data. High income students who participate, so low participation on the left side versus high participation on in after school, you see that they are pretty steady. And we know this. This is what data tells us. Middle income does increase, but look at this low income student that you were just talking about with that. When the higher the participation, they will outpace students with high income probably because of the things that they've had to overcome in their lifetime. So those are just some of the things that after school really does make a big difference in what that is. So I think we can all work together on that. I can't thank you guys enough for joining us today. You really made everyone's day, even though you probably don't feel like it. You really truly made all of our days just by listening to your stories and being able to share that. Thank you to Madam Secretary for joining us. It was really great knowledge, and I think everyone appreciates the right things are.
Can I share something? One more thing. There's this cool thing that I'm doing. So all my teachers are like told me that it was a good idea because we're doing like this genius hour type thing. That's what it's called, and we do it every Friday. And I am making a fashion line for diabetics, and like because I'm like, I have a pump and everything, and it just ruins your fashion. Like, oh my goodness, like it's awful. And like, so all my teachers are like, you should make a fashion line for that. So I and making a fashion line for all like the diabetics and having like all the like pockets, like extra pockets, because like you really need pockets with all the pumps and Dexcoms and all of the stuff that you need. So I just wanted to share that.
You need to talk to Malachi and Desi because they need to be providing you some supplies so you can practice on your line for after school, right? Like that's such a great opportunity for what you're doing. So again, guys, we can't thank you enough. It's 11:04, so I want to make sure that everyone has time that they can go. But you guys are awesome, and have a happy holidays, guys.